Hello creators, in this video I will be taking you through the calculation of cost and revenue curves, which will leave us at a better state to interpret the graphical depiction of economic profit, economic loss, and normal profit. Okay, let's assume that a business, a firm, an individual producer is faced with different quantities that he or she may supply, and they range from 0 to 8, and the price is 6 rand. In a perfect competition, we know that the price is determined in the market, in the industry. So it means that this individual producer must comply and sell his product at a price of 6 rand, regardless of the quantity that he or she is supplying. And then in order to calculate total revenue, we must know our formulas. The formula for calculating total revenue is quantity multiplied by price. So we first need to have price in order to calculate total revenue, given that we already have the quantity. Since we are in a perfect competition, it means that this 6 rand price will apply for the rest of the quantities. So all the quantities are sold at a constant price, at a fixed price of 6 rand. And then our total revenue, we will say quantity 0 multiplied by price 6 rand, quantity 1 multiplied by price 6 rand, quantity 2 so on, going on. And then we were also given the total cost of the business. After calculating total revenue, we can then calculate if whether the business is making a profit or a loss. We know that if the business is receiving more revenue than their cost, then that business is making a profit. Hence, we are saying if we have total revenue and total cost, we can determine if whether the business is making a loss or a profit. So our total revenue figures, we subtract total cost from them, and then we will see that the business is making a profit. Then for average revenue, we will use the total revenue figures, these figures that we have here, that we had here, and then we divide them by the quantity. If we want the total, the average revenue for this quantity here, so we will say whatever the figure that is here divided by 1. And for the average revenue here, it will be this figure that is here divided by 2. That is the quantity in relation to that. And then the marginal revenue, it is the additional revenue that is received for producing an additional unit of a product. And we know that our theory tells us that demand curve in a perfect competition is equal to average revenue curve, and it's also equal to the price, and it's also equal to marginal revenue. So all will be 6 rand. All quantity levels will be at 6 rand. Okay, there we have our worked out table. It's complete. We have calculated all the required costs and revenues for the business, but in order to determine profit on a graphical state, we are going to use the quantity for our x-axis and price for our y-axis, and then we also need to draw the average cost curve together with the average revenue curve. So we are supposed to have 3 curves and the marginal cost curve. So these are the 3 curves that we need to see from a graph perspective if whether the business is making a profit or a loss. Okay, let us look at this information and apply it on the on a graph paper. There. This is a source, one of the submissions that were made, and as we stated, on the y-axis it will be price. On the y-axis we have different price quantity for each quantity, and then on the x-axis we have quantity. So we will first draw our average revenue curve, because we still remember the figures there for average revenue curve. Okay, for the average revenue curve, we realized that everything is at 6 rand. That is why we have a horizontal average revenue curve. What is this saying? This is saying at quantity 0, the average revenue is 6. At quantity 1, the average revenue is still 6. At quantity 2, the average revenue is still 6, and so on. Even if we produce supply 8 units of quantity, but the price will still be at 6 rand. So that is the average revenue that we will receive. And then we need to also draw the average cost curve. Here we are using the cost curves that the total cost curve that we were provided with by dividing it with each quantity. And we realize that at quantity 1, our average at quantity 1, our average cost is at here 5. That is our first point. At quantity 2, we have an average cost of 4. At quantity 3, we have, is it still 4? Let's check our data from the previous slide. But at the end of the day, when you merge all the dots, you will end up with an average cost curve of this nature, AC. You can just drag it a bit up. Okay? And then the marginal cost curve, also using the very same data that we have on the table, you will realize that when we are producing one quantity there, the average, not average, the marginal cost is at that point. And then once we have done all the dotted points, we can then end up with a marginal cost curve. With these curves, we can determine, we can tell if whether a business is making a profit. How so? Okay, let's look at it. We are still focusing on calculations and not on graphs. This is how we can calculate if whether a business is making a profit or loss. Recall that we have 6 and our average cost is what? Where is the marginal cost? And okay, our average cost, let's go. Total cost, it is price times quantity. Our price is at 6 rand, and at marginal cost we have quantity. The maximum quantity that we will be maximizing profit is at 5. And then so the total cost for the business is 30 rand or 30,000, given whatever in amounts the figures are in. And then total cost, we will have average cost multiplied by quantity, and our average cost is 6 rand and the quantity is 5. So our average costs are 20 rand. In order to determine profit, we will say total revenue or total cost. Sorry, here I made a mistake. This should be total. This is a typing error. This is total revenue. Okay, sorry about that. We will say total revenue minus total cost, so it will be 30 minus 20, and then we will realize that the business is making a profit of 10 rand, of 10,000 or $10, given whatever figures this is stated in.